to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On today's headlines, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. lauded Filipinos in Indonesia for their good standing in the country. Marcos was greeted with cheers and applause by the Filipino community, many of them wanting to approach him and shake his hand or take photos. And President Marcos also met with his Indonesian counterpart, Joko Widodo, at the presidential palace in Indonesia's Bogor City. President Jokowi and his wife, Iriana Joko Widodo, welcomed Marcos and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos at the Istana Bogor. The trip by Marcos is his first official trip overseas since his election victory. And Taiwanese prosecutors indicted 9 suspects on human trafficking charges for allegedly luring 88 people to Cambodia to toil in online scam syndicates that have become a regional scourge. Those indicted in Taiwan include the heads of 2 human smuggling rings that ran job adverts on social media with promises of high salaries and easy loans. And the Philippine Navy announced it'll be christening its first 2 fast attack interdictor craft missiles, or FIMs, of which around 9 were acquired from Israel Shipyards Limited. And first in our news, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. Sunday lauded Filipinos in Indonesia for their good standing in the country. He thanked them for their contributions to sustaining trade, tourism, and people-to-people links between the 2 countries. The president made a speech during his visit to the Filipino community in a hotel in Jakarta. Take a look.
Ako'y nagpapasalamat na nabigyan ng pagkakataon na itong pagkakataon na makapagsalita sa inyong lahat. At tatanong ko lang sa inyo, kumusta na po kayong lahat? Ito yung unang-una kong state visit. Mula ako ay sumumpa at umupo bilang Pangulo. At alam niyo naman, hindi kumpleto ang pagbisita sa Indonesia kung hindi ko makakapiling ngayong hapon kayong lahat dito sa Jakarta. Taos-puso akong nagpapasalamat sa inyo dahil sa inyong pagmamahal sa ating bayan, sa inyong sakripisyo na inyong dinadaanan para sa inyong mga pamilya, para sa inyong minamahal na Pilipinas. At kayo ngayon ay naging Ambassador of Goodwill na ng Pilipinas dito sa Indonesia. Prioridad, mabuhay kayo! Huwag masyadong malakas, magselos yung asawa ko. Not in front of my wife, kayo talaga, oh. Dahil dito, asahan po ninyo na magiging fully operational na sa simula ng 2023 ang Department of Migrant Workers sa pamumuno ni Kalihim Susan Toots Ople na napakalaki ng kontribusyon ninyong lahat sa Pilipinas, sa inyong mga pamilya, at kahit na sa ekonomiya ng Pilipinas. At kami naman ay laging nagpapasalamat na ang inyong sakripisyo ay patuloy pa rin ninyong ginagawa. Pinapakita ninyo ang pinakamagandang ugali ng Pilipino, at ito ay nagbibigay bunga sa pagtulong sa ating mga kababayan na naiwan sa Pilipinas.
Now, this was his first official activity during his 3-day state visit to Indonesia from September 4th to the 6th. He also hailed Filipinos for their successes in Indonesia, citing how they have made their fellow men back home very, very proud. Marcos acknowledged that some Filipinos opt to work abroad due to the lack of opportunities back home. He said his administration will remain committed to ensuring that every Filipino's economic, social, and cultural potential is fully realized in their home country. He also vowed to prioritize the welfare and rights of OFWs around the world under the soon-to-be fully operational Department of Migrant Workers. In a separate press briefing, Migrant Workers Secretary Susan Ople said President Marcos's decision to schedule his meeting with the Filipino community in Indonesia as his primary agenda shows his great concern for the interests of OFWs. Ople met with leaders of the Filipino community to discuss the flagship programs and projects of the newly established department. She also expressed hope to get in touch with OFWs to solicit their suggestions and to listen to their concerns. Indonesia is home to around 7,451 Filipinos. Meanwhile, Indonesia President Joko Widodo welcomed President Marcos Jr. at the Bogor Presidential Palace. Today, take a look. Now, this is President Marcos's first state visit to Jakarta. The president was given honors at this welcome ceremony, which was followed by the signing of a guest book. The chief executive and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos then had a walk around the palace with President Widodo and First Lady Iriana. They also carried out a ceremonial tree planting activity. Now, today, both leaders are expected to discuss cooperation on defense, maritime border, economic, and people-to-people exchanges during their bilateral meeting. Now, during his pre-departure speech, to recall, President Marcos said he will be meeting with the President of Indonesia for the first time to discuss bilateral relationship between the Philippines and Indonesia and the changing global geopolitical environment. He also said he will be witnessing the signing of several agreements between the two countries covering important areas of cooperation such as defense and security, the creative economy, and culture. President Marcos also said he will also be visiting Singapore from September 6 to 7 upon the invitation of Singaporean President Halima Yacob. And then the president will be meeting both the President and Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to renew their shared commitment to deepen bilateral relations, explore options for advancing our economic ties, and discuss regional and global issues. The President said both state visits are meant to harness the country's potential of its vibrant trade and investment relations. He also said an economic briefing, business forums, and meetings will be held to attract more investments and buyers for exports to accelerate the country's post-pandemic growth. In a press briefing on Friday, Foreign Affairs spokesperson Maria Teresita Daza said the South China Sea and key regional issues would be tackled by President Marcos and his counterparts both in Indonesia and in Singapore. Meanwhile, India has just joined the Aircraft Carrier Club. India commissioned its first home-built aircraft carrier as it seeks to counter regional rival China's much larger and growing fleet and expand its own indigenous shipbuilding capabilities. First, let's listen in.
आज भारत विश्व के उन देशों में शामिल हो गया है जो स्वदेशी तकनीक से इतने विशाल एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर का निर्माण करता है।
the tricolor and the ensign.
Now, according to Diplomat News, the new 860-foot carrier designed by the Indian Navy and built at the Cochin shipyard in southern India was launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi as part of the country's commemoration of 75 years of independence from British rule. The Navy said the INS Vikrant is the largest warship to be built in the country, and it can carry a crew of around 1,600 and operate a fleet of 30 aircraft, including fighter jets and helicopters. The outlay also comes at a time of increasing concern among military top brass over the strategic challenge posed by China's increasing presence in the Indian Ocean. Last month, New Delhi joined Washington in raising security concerns when neighbor Sri Lanka allowed a port visit by a Chinese research vessel accused of spying activities. India and the U.S. are both members of the so-called Quad, a security alliance focused on the Indo-Pacific and aimed at providing a more substantive counterweight to China's rising military and economic power. Meanwhile, deposed Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is facing calls for his arrest after returning home from self-imposed exile under the protection of his successor's government. First, let's listen to some reactions.
He came back yesterday night and he's a Sri Lankan citizen, and even until July 9th, even on July 9th, we asked him to resign. We did not expect for him to just jump away from the country and go, but it is he went because he felt like there is a threat to his life. He can be in Sri Lanka as far as he is not involved in active politics, and he will be kept accountable for what he has done for this country. It wouldn't be an issue.
I have no issue with Gotabaya Rajapaksa coming back into this country. The issue is that while he was the president, there were several injustices and several crimes. So we need the relevant authorities to take action. If a citizen committed a crime, he would not just be investigated but also arrested. Therefore, I believe that the same system needs to be applied whether you are a government official or a citizen.
Now, leaders of the protest campaign that toppled his government said Rajapaksa, who lost his presidential immunity after leaving office, should now be brought to justice. Rajapaksa's government was accused of chaotic mismanagement as the Sri Lankan economy spiraled into a blistering downturn. And the crisis saw acute shortages of food, lengthy blackouts, and long queues at gas stations for scarce fuel supplies after the country ran out of foreign currency to pay for vital imports. Rajapaksa fled the island nation under military escort in July after a huge crowd stormed his official residence following months of demonstrations sparked by an unprecedented economic crisis. The 73-year-old announced his resignation from Singapore, and he spent weeks under virtual house arrest at a Bangkok hotel before his return late on Friday. In tonight's other news, a stabbing spree in an indigenous community in a nearby town in Canada's Saskatchewan province left at least 10 people dead and 15 wounded as they launch a manhunt for two suspects in one of the nation's deadliest incidents of mass violence. Thomas I. Likeness for the details.
The stabbings took place in two communities in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan. Rhonda Blackmore, Assistant Commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, picks up the story.
At this point in our investigation, we have located 10 deceased individuals in 13 locations in the community of James Smith Cree Nation and Weldon, Saskatchewan. Several additional victims have been injured, 15 of which at this point have been transported to various hospitals.
The manhunt covers the province of Saskatchewan as well as the neighboring provinces of Alberta and Manitoba. Police issued an alert telling people to be on the lookout for two men, but not to approach them as they're considered armed and dangerous. These are the people police are looking for. Police say some of the victims were targeted, others were attacked randomly. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tweeted his condolences. He calls the attacks horrific and heartbreaking. Canada is home to more than 780,000 Filipinos. More than 33,000 of them live in Saskatchewan. Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News, Edmonton, Canada. We live in extraordinary times.
Thank you, Thomas. Meanwhile, Taiwanese prosecutors indicted 9 suspects on human trafficking charges for allegedly luring 88 people to Cambodia to toil in online scam syndicates that have become a regional scourge. Now, those indicted in Taiwan include the heads of 2 human smuggling rings that ran job adverts on social media with promises of high salaries and easy loans, according to the Taipei District Prosecutor's Office in a statement. Some were beaten and hit with electric shocks or held for ransom if they refused to obey orders or perform poorly, the statement added. The ads tricked jobless young people and those with financial difficulties into going to Cambodia. And once there, they were handed over to telecom and online fraud rings that forced them to work. The suspects also face organized crime and deprivation of liberty charges. Online boiler room rackets have long had a presence across Southeast Asia. But in recent months, more details have emerged of people being trafficked and forced to work. Victims have reported traveling to Myanmar, Cambodia, and Thailand and Laos on false promises of romance or high-paying jobs. ASEAN in Focus, we'll be right back. Welcome back. President Gabriel Boric vowed to continue working to reform the political landscape after Chileans emphatically rejected a proposed new constitution to replace the one adopted during the Augusto Pinochet dictatorship. Our correspondent from Chile, Kevin Cortez, reports from Santiago.
Chileans emphatically rejected a proposed new constitution to replace the one adopted during the Augusto Pinochet dictatorship.
El segundo mensaje del pueblo chileno es que no quedó satisfecho con la propuesta de constitución que la Convención le presentó a Chile y por ende ha decidido rechazarla de manera clara en las urnas. Es que me comprometo a poner todo de mi parte para construir en conjunto con el Congreso y la sociedad civil un nuevo itinerario constituyente que nos entregue un texto que, recogiendo los aprendizajes del proceso, logre interpretar a una amplia mayoría ciudadana.
With more than 88% of votes counted, the reject camp led with 62% compared to just 38% for those in favor. Polling stations opened at 8 a.m. and closed 10 hours later. The new constitution would have overhauled Chile's government, replacing the Senate with a less powerful Chamber of Regents and requiring women to hold at least half of positions in public institutions.
Es un triunfo realmente sorprendente y eso significa que Chile es un país que rechaza el comunismo, el marxismo y el intento del comunismo por apoderarse del poder y llegar al poder.
Some feared that the new text would generate instability and uncertainty, which could then harm the economy. Those in favor of the new constitution believed it would have prompted changes in a conservative country marked by social and ethnic tensions and lay foundation for a more egalitarian society. They say the current constitution gives private enterprise free rein over crucial industries and creates a fertile breeding ground for the rich to prosper and the poor to struggle. Although the 1980 Constitution has undergone several reforms since it was adopted, it retains the stigma of having been introduced during a dictatorship. Sunday's poll was the third time in just 2 years that the Chileans have voted on the referendum. The new text was drawn up by Constitutional Convention made up of 154 members, mostly with no political affiliation, split equally between men and women, with 17 places reserved for indigenous people. The resulting proposal recognized 11 indigenous people and offered them greater autonomy, particularly on judicial issues. Some critics accuse the authors of trying to turn traditionally marginalized indigenous people into higher-class citizens. Reporting from Santiago, Chile, this is Kevin Cortez. We live in extraordinary times. Back to you.
In other news, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken denounced a new 3-year sentence imposed on Myanmar's ousted elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi, and he urged further pressure on the country's junta. Take a look. He said, "We strongly condemn the Burma military regime's unjust sentencing of Aung San Suu Kyi to 3 more years of prison, including hard labor," Blinken said, using Myanmar's former name. He said, "We must work together to hold the regime accountable for its escalating violence and repression of democratically elected leaders in Burma." The latest sentence, handed down behind closed doors, takes the total jail time the Nobel laureate and democracy figurehead is facing to 2 decades. The new sentence was over purported electoral fraud in 2020 polls that her party won by a landslide. The military deposed and detained her during the following February and has piled on a series of charges, including corruption that her supporters say are trumped up. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. has designated former Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Lopez Locsin Jr. as the new Philippine Ambassador to the United Kingdom. In a brief statement, Press Secretary Beatrix Trixie Cruz Angeles confirmed Marcos nominated Locsin for the position. With the assignment, Locsin will also have concurrent jurisdiction over Ireland, Isle of Man, Bailiwick of Jersey, and Bailiwick of Guernsey. Now, Marcos issued the nomination papers of Locsin last Tuesday. Locsin can assume his new position once he gets the approval of the Bilateral Commission on Appointments. A Harvard-trained lawyer, TV host, and 3-term Makati Congressman, Locsin headed the Department of Foreign Affairs during the administration of former President Rodrigo Duterte. In other news, the Philippine Navy announced it will be christening its first 2 fast attack interdictor craft missiles, or FICMs, of which around 9 were acquired from Israel shipyards limited on Tuesday. PN spokesperson, Philippine Navy spokesperson Commander Benjo Negranza, in a statement said the christening ceremony will be held at 8 a.m. at the Commodore Divino Pierre Naval Station, Jose Andrada, Rojas Boulevard, Manila. The 2 FAICMs were loaded aboard a cargo ship and departed Haifa, Israel, late August. Now, these vessels were formally launched last June 26. It'll be commissioned into the Philippine Navy as the BRP Nestor Acero and BRP Lolinato Ong. 4 of the FICMs will be armed with non-line of sight missiles with pinpoint accuracy and a range of 25 kilometers, while the other 4 will be armed with machine guns and light automatic cannons. The acquisition of 8 FICM units is among the 2019 projects approved by the former President Duterte under the Horizon 2 list of the revised Armed Forces of the Philippines Modernization Program. Filipino pole vaulter E.J. Obiena again made history as he beat the world #1 and Olympic gold medalist Armando Duplantis of Sweden in a stunning victory that again brought pride and honor to the country. At Friday's Diamond League meet in Brazil, Obiena cleared 5.91 meters on the 3rd and final attempt, but Duplantis didn't and settled for silver. Obiena thus broke the legendary Duplantis winning streak as the Swede pole vaulter suffered a rare loss. Before this, Duplantis had been easily winning the gold in international pole vault competitions, the last at the Lausanne Diamond League pole vault competition staged on the banks of Lake Geneva on August 25 with a winning 6.10 meters vault achieved on his 3rd attempt. Now at that meeting, Obiena placed 3rd after clearing 5.80 meters. Obiena then won the gold at the St. Wendel City Jump in Germany on August 31, his 3rd gold in pole vaulting competitions in Germany. This is the first Diamond League win for the 26-year-old Filipino pole vaulter that had set an Asian record at the World Athletics Championships in Eugene, Oregon last July. He was the only Filipino and Asian to advance to the finals after he cleared the 5.94 meter mark, posting a new Asian record. And Filipino Francis Casey Alcantara and Indonesian Christopher Rungkat settled for a runner-up finish in the men's doubles of the Bangkok Open 2 in Nonthaburi, Thailand on Sunday. They lost to third seeds Benjamin Locke of Zimbabwe and Yuta Shimizu of Japan 1-6, 3-6 in the final of the ATV Tour Challenger event. Alcantara and Rungkat defeated Anirudh Chandrasekhar and Vishnu Vardhan of India 2-6, 6-4, 11-9 to reach the championship round, while the 6'6" Locke and Shimizu advanced after beating Yun Sung Chung of South Korea and Beibit Zhukasev of Kazakhstan 7-6, 6-3. The Filipino-Indonesian pair's other victories were over Sergey Fomin and Denis Istomin of Uzbekistan 7-6, 6-2, and second seeds Ray Ho of Chinese Taipei and Grigory Lomakin of Kazakhstan 7-5, 4-6, 10-5. Congratulations. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations and beyond. Stay updated on the news. Stay in the news because I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.